Hello and welcome. My name is Faz. I'm the president of DX3 and I welcome you to DX3 Pulse. DX3 Pulse is our regular and timely insights that are shared by biggest and brightest names in the industry focused on the retail and marketing industry. Another episode in the series which is part of DX3 Pulse to talk about different business leaders within the marketing community. So today I'm absolutely delighted to have Julia Amorim with us. In a professional journey, Julia has taken her from user experience design to CMO and now global creative. Julia blends the agility of a startup founder with the professional expertise that comes with helping some of the world's largest brands navigate the journey of digital transformation. Entrenched in the ad tech sector for more than 15 years, her track record includes contributing to the launch of an ad network, building high performance digital first teams, and bringing creativity led customer and data centricity to client campaigns. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you so much, Fez. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, how have you been?
Not bad. There's been a lot going on. It's an interesting time to be in the field of marketing and creative, especially with generative AI and other things. But doing really well. Thank you.
I mean, you have actually gone through such a transformation because the industry you're in was also transforming at a very sort of fast rate. So, how do you, when you look back at it from starting like an ad network or working for an ad network to where you are today, what stands out for you?
Yeah, 100%. It's been a massive transformation from the early days, right? The very beginnings of what we know today as the programmatic ecosystem. So back then, things were a much smaller scale, right? Networks, and the concept evolved over time into what we know today as the exchange ecosystem. So rather than, little pockets of ad networks that had different areas of specialization or, specialty groupings of websites, for example, like travel, mobile gaming, things like that. We move into an ecosystem where we have now exchanges that are connected to almost all digital supply that's out there. And then we have what we call demand side platforms. So they kind of separated, right? Whereas a network was all in one. We had demand, we had supply, and we had a technology layer that was used to manage the interaction between the demand side and the supply side. And that's separated out over time into an exchange landscape, which is focused exclusively on supply and publishers, and a demand side landscape, which is focused on arming marketers and their agency partners with technology that they can use to access that supply in an intelligent way.
And can you talk a little bit about in terms of you were with a ad network, then you set up MediaNet, and now you're with Brain Lab. So how was that journey like for you as a business person, as a business professional? Uh, do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's been a really interesting journey. I feel very privileged that I've had the opportunity to work on so many different sides of the industry and learn from them. And each experience has really enriched the next experience. So, I got a great understanding of how things work on the supply and publisher side of the business initially as part of the ad network ecosystem. But what was really interesting is when we pivoted into MediaNet, we pivoted into more of a digital consultancy. So helping our clients to activate through digital channels using technology. And at that time, we evaluated a lot of different platforms so that we could, select the best possible tech that provided the best possible options for our clients, including an integrated creative suite, because creative had always been a big part of what we did and how we differentiated our overall service proposition. And we ended up partnering with Google. So we came to find that their enterprise technology at the time really ticked all the boxes that our clients were looking for, and opened up a wider net of inventory and possibilities. And they also had the creative component. So over time, we working with Google, and eventually it led to an invitation to apply to become a channel partner. And so that would be, essentially a value added reseller of their enterprise marketing technology. So that resulted in a pivot really to the business model. It was an exciting pivot. And so we really leaned in heavily on the consultancy aspect of what we were doing. And we branched outside of just providing marketing services, either through agencies or to marketers, but instead to empowering marketers and agencies to onboard this enterprise technology, set it up the right way, be trained on how to use it the right way, and then provide them with ongoing support. So it was a really interesting shift to the business model.
So how did then the whole sort of part of Brain Labs come about?
So Brain Labs, like an international agency that at the time was headquartered and still is headquartered in the UK. Really strong presence in the UK, comes from a performance search heritage, which
Mm.
has over time evolved into full service media. So at the time, we as MediaNet were keen to really accelerate our growth, especially what we were doing with with Google. We saw what we were doing in Canada as almost like a proof of concept for the model, and it was working really well. We built the foundation. We had a really strong process infrastructure in place, and we were ready to take it to the next level. And so the desire was, look, we want to build this now in the US because Canada is wonderful, but the real opportunity is going to be across the border. So in order to do that, we explored the option of, joining forces with another partner to help accelerate that process because we were a small independent business. It eventually led to a partnership with Brain Labs. They were super keen on MediaNet because we had that Google marketing platform expertise. We were a consultancy. We had built a very sophisticated practice around activating that technology, and it was an area that they were interested in growing within the North American market. So it was really a great synergy, and the US was a priority market for the company. So everything was quite complementary, and it led to us joining up with Brain Labs. And so we went through a period of integration. It was very fast. And I think that was for the best. A lot of times acquisitions take place and the company isn't really integrated, but operates still as a separate unit. Instead, we were integrated our entire practice into the overall Brain Labs organization. And within about 8 months, that process was complete and we sunset the MediaNet brand.
So how has sort of the entry into the US market been for Brain Labs and for your team? Like, can you talk about the experience of that? Any challenges that faced being like one a UK based brand and then a Canadian company, but now trying to get into a much larger market in the US?
Yeah, so the company actually already had a presence in the US. It was another acquisition that took place about a year and a half prior to to ours. So that was great to already have a presence and feet on the ground in that market. But the Google licensing and servicing aspect of the business was still brand new in the US. So it did, it's been taking some time. Like any business, it takes time to get it off the ground. Part of that was starting to build relationships with the Google teams in the US market, right? That's where it starts. And then growing there, as well as introducing these services as part of our overall value proposition to existing clients within the US market. So, like a growing or expansion strategy within existing accounts. So that's really been the approach, and it's growing and it's actually flourishing right now. But it, like anything, it has taken some time to get it off the ground.
Oh, that's great. I mean, now that we're almost at the end of 2023, how's this year been for you guys? How's, when you look back at the past 10, 11 months now, did you guys get to accomplish what you wanted to? Anything that came up that was not supposed to be, or like surprising, good, bad, either way?
It's been exciting because we at this point we've really built out our overall suite of products and services, and it's quite robust now. And so it gives us a lot of opportunity to really develop an account. And we have a lot of flexibility. So we can have accounts that come in and looking for the full suite of our services, which we can now offer because we have that full set. Or we can have accounts where we partner on one or two specializations, and then we have the opportunity to grow what we're doing with them over time. So that's been really good, and part of that, I think, like almost one of the final elements of bringing that suite of products and capabilities together was creative, and that's something that came together over the last year through another acquisition of a mobile app creative agency, which brought that capability into the agency, which we then combined with our um, programmatic, highly technical approach to advertising. And that all formed the basis of our creative product today. So that's been good. But certainly the whole generative AI buzz has been a hot topic this year. And so it's actually influenced a lot of our planning from an engineering perspective. So a lot of our process and product runs on our own proprietary technology. It's a platform called Cortex, and so we've been inventing ways to bring more and more AI-based tools, including generative tools, into that platform to help improve the efficiency of our workflows. Um, it's come up a lot with creative, and we've seen a lot of the platforms, right, like the Googles, the Metas, TikToks, bringing more and more creative tools that are leveraging AI and generative AI and making that available to their end users directly within the platform. And it's really, in some ways, democratized some aspects of creative, making it more accessible. But the creative aspect of it is still there, right? So it's definitely a great way to enhance the efficiency of the product, but it's more about how you use it than that you're using it, right? So it's still that balance between creativity and using tools. And we definitely use it as part of our practice, but it's not part of our product necessarily, right? So we use it to help accelerate things like ideation, brainstorming, concepting, refinement of ideas, mock-ups, things like that. So it really helps to move the process forward much more quickly. And then more kind of mundane, very manual or technical tasks, like expanding an image, right? Building out more background where there's some missing. That used to be more of a tedious, really low value creative task. That's something that we can now eliminate because we can use generative fill to instantly create that. So it's allowing us to do a lot more quickly, and freeing up time to focus on really refining designs, refining ideas, and really elevating the quality of the output that we can generate.
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about that. Seems like 2023 is being the year of AI. And I just wanted to sort of ask you, as sort of an industry leader, to, if you can look at and talk about areas where you think AI has an edge, or a AI can actually help others. And I'm not necessarily talking about how are you using it in Brain Labs, but overall in the industry, where do you think generative AI would have sort of advantages where it can actually genuinely make a difference?
Yeah, I mean, I think the applications are wide reaching, and the way I see it, it's not so much just like generative AI as a standalone tool or product, but we're going to see it just become part of the fabric of everything that we're already used to working with, right? And a lot of AI has been part of the behind the scenes of a lot of the tools and platforms that we interact with on a day-to-day basis. It just hasn't been brought into the headlines, right? So, I mean, maybe you use something like Gmail, right? There's a lot of AI going on behind the
Yep.
scenes that helps with just the way your experience with that product. Any modern day word processing software, for example, has generative capabilities now to help you in the moment, right? Improve the efficiency and the quality of your writing, almost as though it's just like an assistant there. And so I think any of these, tech enabled, information oriented experiences are going to continue to be enhanced and improved through generative AI capabilities. But like from our experience, it's just going to become seamless, right? It's just an additional layer of automation that will continue to improve the efficiency of functions, like day to day functions.
And one of the things, I mean, you mentioned that a couple of times in terms of creative. So I wanted to ask, in sort of your career, and it's almost like you started in this industry when digital advertising started to become mainstream and the traffic became of value and it became an asset and could be monetized. How has creative aspect of that changed over the years? I mean, what have you seen where you think where it used to be, where it is now, and then if you can talk a little bit about the value of creative going forward.
Yeah, definitely. So creative has evolved significantly. In the early days, um, one of the biggest performance channels through digital was search. And when we think about search as a channel, the creative is really the copy, right? So
Yep.
it's the copy that goes behind the ads, and how those come together, how different keywords trigger different iterations of the copy and things like that. So as time went on and new channels popped up, display, for example, even in the very early days, I don't know if you remember the format, the pop up, where you go to a website and then an ad would overlay your experience.
Yeah.
Extremely disruptive and annoying, right? So we've come from that age, right, where that was acceptable, right? Really annoying, distasteful ads. And over time, more quality controls became implemented as part of the platforms or the gates to getting that advertising content out to the supply side. More safeguards, not only for marketers, but also for publishers. Right? Because if I'm a publisher, I have a duty to maintain a certain experience for my audience, and advertising becomes part of the content of that experience. So we've seen some more quality control as far as creative be introduced, um, and I think that we also saw more of a transition from display to video, right? So video became much more important as a vehicle for communicating. Um, and today we're seeing more and more the influencer approach to creative has really gained in popularity. Like when you think about platforms like TikTok, we have a very small window of time, like just really a split second to be able to capture someone's attention.
Yep.
And so the approach that you take really needs to conform to the user experience on that platform to be effective. So, and this is actually an area that a lot of marketers are struggling with. How do we take this big idea, this big campaign idea or brand construct, but then how do we bring it to life through all of these different channels that we know our consumers are interacting with, right? Because consumers are everywhere. Like just look at yourself, right? I mean, we use social media, we browse the web, we walk outdoor, we see billboards, we're all over the place. So how do we translate that creative experience into a way that is fit for all of these different channels that we may be finding our audience in? So that's definitely a challenge, and each platform has a very unique experience and has very prescriptive requirements or recommendations or best practices about how to bring creative to life through that platform. So it can become a bit overwhelming. And it's all about the creative, right? So if we think a bit about, going back to AI and automation, when we think about platforms, a big part of it used to be, going in platform, understanding how to pull the levers, how to architect a campaign, and then once that campaign is live, how to go about meticulously fine tuning how it's being run to optimize business outcomes. And with more and more automation being incorporated into these platforms, what we can do as campaign operators is becoming more and more limited, right? So a lot of that is being managed now through black box algorithms. But one thing that we still have as a lever that we can pull and influence is creative, right? So we're putting a lot more emphasis on creative for its ability to influence outcomes and it intuitively, right? But there's tons of research that backs up that anywhere between 50 and 70% of the impact of an ad can be attributed to that creative, right? So if we're being super meticulous about how we go about placing an ad so that it's, the right moment, it's the right audience, if we don't get that creative right, if there's something about the message that isn't resonating or the format, then we've lost that opportunity, right? And all of that effort that went into that perfect placement isn't being realized, right? So we want to think about it in a bit more of a holistic way.
And I wanted to kind of pivot a little bit from there to talking a little bit more about sort of you as a person, as a business person. Because I mean, the journey that you have is very, very interesting. I mean, in that space that you are in, to go from setting up your own shop, running it successfully, growing it, and then becoming part of an acquisition, and now integrating. I mean, as you said, I mean, there are many acquisitions where things fall apart at the integration aspect of it, things. So how was that as a business person for you? I mean, also, I mean, the other lens is that you are a female business entrepreneur. So how does that, all of that work? What was your journey like, going from working for someone and then setting up your own agency and then being acquired and then now being leading a team or leading part of that new business?
Yeah, I think that I love a challenge, right? I love a big project to sink my teeth into, and so the journey with MediaNet, for example, was really exciting because it was a big challenge. There was a lot to think through, and the journey was not straightforward, right? It involved a lot of pivoting, and that's something that I enjoy, right? I love the pivot, I love the challenge, and so that made it quite interesting. But when we got to a point where we had built this successful business and there was desire to scale, I just knew that to do this effectively, just given all the changes in the market, time
Yep.
was of the essence to really go out there and accelerate what we were doing. And the only way for us to be able to do that as a business was to partner up with somebody.
Yep.
So that drove the decision to do it. It was a difficult decision to make because I will say that the transition from being a business owner to becoming part of a company is it's different. It's a different experience. And it's something that it keeps you up at night.
Yeah.
Right? Was that the right decision to make? But in the end, I stand by what we did, and I feel like it was the best move that we possibly could have made. For our clients, for our partners, and of course for our team. And integration. So in some cases, you never quite know. These things aren't always discussed up front. And for me, I've never been through a process like this before, so I wasn't necessarily completely equipped with everything that I should have been on top of. But either usually it goes one of two ways, right? You get acquired and you continue to operate as an independent business, but within this larger organization. And there may be some elements of the business that get integrated, but for the most part, you remain this separate unit. Or there's the integration piece where every aspect of the business is going to be then integrated into the larger company. So we ended up being fully integrated into the business. I don't think that I had a full understanding going into it that that was the plan. So, coming to the realization that we were going to be sunsetting the brand and really, in some ways, dismantling the company and our identity, and morphing into something different. That was a little bit of a challenging realization to come to. But, like anything, you have to just lean into it and work towards the best possible outcome, right? There's no sense in resisting because that wouldn't be good for anyone. So we leaned in fully and got through the process. And it was important because during a time like this, it can be like this feeling for the team of being in limbo, right? Are we part of MediaNet? Is this still our identity? Are we part of this company? And, it can be a very confusing time. And I think the longer that period of time is, the harder it is for the team. So in a way, trying to get through it, even though it may feel uncomfortable, as quickly as you possibly can is great in a certain way, because then the team feels like they can identify with this new company, this new role, this new structure, operationally, the way things are working now. And they can have a period of settling into that, right? But if we're just anticipating it and we haven't fully made the transition, it can be more challenging. And so, following our integration, I then had the opportunity to help facilitate the integration of another company into the business. And in that case, it was a different scenario. There was a resistance to integrate. And so things had been delayed for a considerable amount of time. And then I came in and then accelerated the process of integrating that team into the business. But I could see firsthand, because I had been through it with my own team, how much more challenging and how much more worn out that team was because it had taken so long. And there was just so much uncertainty. So once we were able to complete the process, the team's well-being just, it seemed to really bounce back.
And how was sort of your team's reaction to this whole thing? Because I know that you have it was a very close knit people who've been with you for a number of years. It was a very good team. It still is. So how did they react to this whole thing? Because a lot of these things fall through because the teams aren't aligned in terms of the direction.
Definitely. Yeah, we have an incredible team. It's just been such a blessing to work with them for such a long period of time. And I think part of it is just the nature of who they are, right? And how we have curated this team of really incredible people that have the same passion for the work, but also the same affinity for change, right? An appetite for a challenge and how we can continue to evolve ourselves. And I think that they understood, right, the opportunity we had, right, and that we wanted to protect everything that we had built, right, in our amazing client base, our amazing partnerships, and the amazing culture that we had built together. We wanted to preserve it and we wanted to grow it. And I think there was, a pretty universal understanding and excitement about the fact that we were doing this, and we were in a position to be able to really extend and grow this practice in a more significant and substantial way. And, as a smaller business, things, there's a lot of, people wear multiple hats. There aren't as many formal systems in place as you might expect in a larger organization. And I think that there was a bit of an appetite within our smaller team to have some more of that, right? Some more of that structure, more of the systems, more of the opportunities that you would expect as part of a larger organization. So that was another bonus, right? To be able to get that. But overall, yeah, there was great alignment. And, I think that is a big reason why we were able to go through that process of integration so smoothly, because if that hadn't been there, there would have been a lot of resistance put up, and we would have had a lot of challenge getting to the place that we eventually arrived at.
So what's on the horizon for this industry going forward? Like New Year is coming up. What's on the horizon for you? I know that you like to get involved with a project and you want to have something. So what's coming up for in 2024 overall for the industry? And also if there's anything that you're doing that you want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I think for the industry, we're going to see more and more emphasis on strategy, right? So if you think about marketing services, some of those lower value tasks, we're going to see those over time diminish,
Yep.
and kind of erode from that services portfolio that you would have typically seen within, an agency service mix. And we're going to see more and more emphasis on strategy, on data, right? How we incorporate data as part of our communication strategy, as part of our, audience approach. So a lot more advisory around things like that. I think that, the concept of a traditional media agency is also evolving, right?
Yep.
So there's almost now a requirement to be more tech oriented, more data oriented, and be able to support and advise marketers on how they can stand up these systems, because not just having data, but knowing how to use it, how to organize it so that you can apply it in a way that is actually useful and helps drive business outcomes. That's the key, right? And everything is interlinked in digital. So we're going to see a lot more emphasis on that area. And I had another point that's lost me.
So the other thing was that, and
Oh,
what are you going to be? What are you looking forward to next year? What are you sort of excited about?
well, for me, I maybe because of the role that I occupy currently, it's going to be about creative, right? We're seeing so many of these tools crop up in the platforms. Part of it is thinking about our creative proposition, and how we can integrate that into part of the media activation workflow, right? How do we integrate data as an input and then activation to really, really get creative to a point where it's being used as that lever to drive performance? So it's going to be about refining our narrative around that. And when we think about creative, thinking about it as performance creative, right? Using it as that tool. So again, I would parallel that to search, right? If we go back to search and we think about copy, and how ad copy was really that performance oriented approach to creative, right? And it was integrated as part of that campaign management workflow. It wasn't disintegrated, right? If you're managing a search campaign, you're optimizing copy, and it's just part of the process. So I think we're
Yep.
going to see that we're going to eventually get back there, right? But it's going to be with a broader slew of assets. So it's not just ad copy anymore. How are we optimizing video, imagery, all of that stuff? And I think it's really exciting, because up to now, there hasn't been a lot of emphasis on using that broader suite of formats as a vehicle for driving performance. So yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to most.
Well, Julia, thank you very much for your time. It was lovely seeing you. It's been a long time, but I'm glad we had an opportunity to have this conversation. For the latest updates, subscribe to our channels linked below. You can also visit us at dx3canada.com. It will help you keep updated with our content and engage with us and interact